Southern California Wildfires. The Southern California Wildfires are, as of recording this video, an active burning group of 23 individual wildfires that began on January 7th, 2025 in Southern California. 18 of them have been contained, but 5 of the fires are still ravaging the state. The fire has burned over 40,000 acres and is being moved by what are called devil winds or Santa Ana winds. Currently, over 25 deaths are attributed to the fire. More than 200,000 citizens in the affected cities have been evacuated, and over 12,000 structures have been destroyed. The cause of the fire is still under investigation, but allegations that a faulty power line sparked it are currently circulating. The Great Chicago Fire. The Great Chicago Fire burned the city of Chicago in 1871 between October 8th and October 10th. It incinerated 2,000 acres of the city and destroyed upwards of 17,000 structures, leaving thousands homeless. Furthermore, it killed an estimate of 300 people, although only 120 bodies were even found. The fire is said to have started inside a small barn, and it is theorized that one of the farmer's cows kicked over a lantern, setting the barn aflame. However, the exact cause of the blaze was never determined. The Chicago Fire Department sent 185 firefighters with 17 horse-drawn steam pumpers to protect the city, but were initially sent to the wrong place, which allowed the fire to spread unchecked. In the end, the cost of the fire's damages was about $5.7 billion US, counting for inflation. Peshtigo Fire. The Peshtigo Fire was a devastating forest fire that occurred on October 8, 1871 in the northeastern regions of Wisconsin. It burned about 1.2 million acres, and it is the deadliest wildfire in recorded history, with the estimated number of deaths being between 1,500 and 2,500. Some survivors claimed that the inferno generated a fire tornado that tossed houses and rail cars into the air. Citizens attempted to escape the flames by plunging into the Peshtigo River, but some drowned while others succumbed to hypothermia. As to what started the fire, there was a hypothesis that it was caused by the impacts of fragments of Biela's comet. However, the cause was later determined to be the spread of small embers from slash and burn agriculture, which is a farming method where farmers clear land by cutting down trees and vegetation, then burning the debris to create a field for planting crops. The excess embers were caught up in wind drafts, and the fires rapidly spread throughout the state. In the end, the property damage was estimated to be about $127 million USD, adjusting for inflation. Black Saturday Bushfires. The Black Saturday Bushfires were a series of bushfires that burned across Australia on February 7th, 2009, and is considered one of the country's deadliest catastrophes. Upwards of 400 fires were recorded on that day, and the mass destruction left many homeless and without their families. There were 173 recorded deaths, and the term Black Saturday was coined in Australia as a result. A few days before, an intense heatwave occurred from January 28th to January 30th, where the city of Melbourne broke temperature records by experiencing 3 consecutive days above 109 degrees Fahrenheit, peaking at 113 degrees. On Black Saturday, temperatures reached 116 and humidity was at an all-time low. On the same day, a power cable snapped and set fire to a pine plantation. The fires rapidly grew in intensity and spread southeast, blanketing a significant portion of Australia. It wasn't until the middle of March, around 6 weeks after the fire had started, that the majority of the fires were finally extinguished. Ultimately, the estimated cost of damages ended up being the equivalent to $4.6 billion USD. Great Fire of 1910. The Great Fire of 1910, often called the Big Burn or the Devil's Broom Fire, was a massive wildfire that burned from August 20th to the 21st in the northwest regions of the United States. It decimated over 3 million acres, and there were around 87 recorded deaths, the majority of which were the firefighters. It remains the second deadliest firefighting incident in the US, with only 9/11 surpassing it by a large margin. The exact culprit is debated, but National Fire Services state that it was caused by lightning strikes igniting small fires that then spread out of control due to dry weather conditions. The western white pine forests that covered much of northern Idaho at the time are also blamed for the ravaging inferno due to their highly flammable sap, This fire is often considered a significant factor for the development of dedicated wildfire prevention organizations, including the popularization of Smokey the Bear a few decades later. It was finally extinguished on September 12, 1910, when a cold front arrived, bringing with it steady rain and even a little bit of snow. Great Miramichi Fire. The Great Miramichi Fire was a massive forest fire that materialized in October 1825 in New Brunswick, Canada. It's among the deadliest forest fires to occur in North America, and it devastated several forests and communities, destroying it nearly 4 million acres. On October 7th, the inferno unfurled into a neighborhood in Miramichi, and in less than 3 hours, the town was completely decimated. Of an estimated 260 buildings, only 12 remained in the end. Upwards of 160 people perished, including inmates imprisoned in a nearby jail. The final death toll is unknown, but considering it spread throughout forests with active lumberjacks and campers, the casualties were likely much higher. Apparently, a pastor who thought his church would burn rushed to the church to see what he could save. The church was miraculously untouched, and when he returned home, he found that his house had been destroyed, and all his family members had perished in the flames. The fire subsided a few days later, and for many years after, on October 7th, townspeople of Miramichi closed stores and abstained from eating in order to honor those who passed. Yellowstone Fires. The Yellowstone Park fires of 1988 collectively formed one of the largest wildfires in the United States. It lasted several months and was started by 51 small fires that spread out of control due to wind and drought conditions. The fires annihilated a significant portion of the park's attractions, and on September 8, 1988, it was forced to shut down for the first time in history. Around 36% of the park, roughly 800,000 acres, were burned at varying levels of severity. Over 9,000 firefighters and dozens of helicopters that released water and fire-retardant materials were sent to suppress the fires, but it wasn't until the arrival of cool weather and rain later that year that the firestorm finally ceased. Only 2 deaths were attributed to the fire, but the amount of infrastructure and forestation that was decimated led the damage repairs to be over $320 million. Black Dragon Fire. The Black Dragon Fire was the deadliest forest fire in the People's Republic of China, and possibly the most cataclysmic wildfire in the world. It broke out on May 6, 1987, and even spread partly into the Soviet Union. It ultimately destroyed 18 million acres of land, including a sixth of China's entire timber reserves. A total of 191 people were killed by the fire. Over 250 were left injured, and over 33,000 Chinese were left homeless as a result of the destruction. As for the cause of the fire, Chinese reports state that it was started when an untrained 18-year-old worker accidentally ignited gas spilled from his brush cutter. Workers who survived reported their truck engine stopped, as the raging inferno deprived the oxygen supply in the air, as well as having burning projectiles raining down on and ahead of them. The fire finally died down a month later on June 2nd due to the efforts of over 60,000 workers, and the aforementioned 18-year-old and his employer ended up in jail. Camp Fire. The 2018 Camp Fire occurred in Northern California and was one of the deadliest and most destructive wildfires in California's history. It began on November 8, 2018, when part of a poorly maintained electrical transmission line failed and molten metal dripped onto the bushes below. The rapid winds accelerated the fire's spread and it decimated over 150,000 acres. It was considered fully contained 2 weeks later on November 25th, assisted by only the presence of some crucial rainfall, but more than 50,000 people were left homeless. At one point, the number of documented deaths was 87, but it was reduced to 85 after remains in 3 separate bags were determined to belong to the same person. The estimated damage was reported to be around $16.5 billion, and the owner of the transmission line, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, was forced to file for bankruptcy, citing the wildfire liabilities as the cause. Siberian Taiga Fires. In June 2021, after unprecedented dry weather and record-breaking temperatures, the taiga forests in Siberia, Russia were hit by outlandish wildfires. The fire burned over 4.2 million acres, and in one city, waves of toxic smoke produced by the fires overwhelmed it and reduced its air quality levels to what was called an airpocalypse. The wildfire smoke even reached the North Pole, which, according to NASA, is a feat that appears to be a first first in recorded history. There is speculation that fires in Russia are deliberately set with the intent to obfuscate evidence of illegal lumbering, which is reinforced by National Forest Services claiming that over half of the fires were going unchecked.